of the Rutherford County School System. First up is our Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Rosales.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming in spite of the weather that's happening tomorrow. Hope everybody's ready for it. I know I am. So here today, I've invited Black Man Middle School, and Dr. Jackson is here with the Beta Club and the Student Council, and I've asked her to graciously come up here to the podium and introduce the kids that are going to be leading the pledge tonight for us.
Strongest students in school, so we're excited to have them. Tonight we have Ella Ajimai, Zoe Diaz, Carly Scott, Michael Harden, Claudia Press, and Ryan Mack. So I told them for doing this, we'll give them a day off tomorrow.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask you to bow your heads for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next up is the approval of the agenda. Everyone can take a look at it. Any comments or questions on the agenda? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second by Ms. Sharp. Ms. Darby. I looked right at you. I'm so sorry. By Ms. Darby. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the approval of the consent agenda. Any comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We have no guest speaker tonight. Next, we have public comment, and we have 5 speakers tonight. Yes, go ahead.
Real quick, if the board noticed, we had Shane Wickwire, who was scheduled. He asked to come on the 23rd, I believe, at our next meeting. He was signed up as the guest speaker from Springs and Power, and he asked to come. The board wondered where that went, or the public wondered where it went from what was published.
Okay, thank you, sir. Each of you will be called up here separately, and you have 3 minutes. I think you know the drill. Let me see here. First, we have Lindsay Schultz.
Good evening, members of the Rutherford County School Board. My name is Lindsay Schultz, and I am not only a business owner in this community, I'm also a parent and a passionate advocate for freedom to read and learn. And tonight I want to address 3 troubling issues: the ongoing banning of books in our schools, how the issue is taking precedence over more important issues like how Central has a mold problem as well as not having heat right now, and the lack of respect I feel that is being shown toward those who come and speak. So first, let's talk about books. When books are banned, it's not just pages that are being removed, it's perspectives, it's identities, it's opportunities for growth that are being stripped away. For example, titles like I'm Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, Shiver and Looking for Alaska are more than just stories. They are lifelines for students who feel unheard and unseen, and by banning those books, you're essentially telling those people that these books represent that they don't matter. And beyond that harm caused by banning books, I find it amazing in that one of our schools is lacking heat and has a mold problem, and yet here we are fighting over books. How can our kids learn when the environments that we're asking them to learn in are potentially hazard to their health? And lastly, I want to address an equally troubling matter, which is the way certain members of this board treat those of us who come here to speak. We stand here because we care deeply about our children, our schools, and our community. We give up time with our families to come and speak to you. And we spend hours preparing our words only to see certain board members glancing at your phones, playing on your watch, and appearing visibly disinterested in what we have to say, and it's very disheartening, to say the least, not to mention that it makes us feel like we're up here wasting our time. And I say this very respectfully, but when you dismiss us, you dismiss the very people that you guys are elected to serve. You undermine the trust that we place in you to listen and lead and make decisions that reflect the best interest of all the people in this community, not just a select few. So how can we as a community have faith in the decisions that you guys are supposed to make if you guys can't be bothered to give us your full attention when we stand up here? So I want to leave you with a thought of trust the people that you put in place to pick books, like our educators, librarians, and our parents, to guide our students through challenging materials, respect the voices in the room, and give us time and give us your attention for the 3 minutes that we're up here. And remember that history is going to pay attention to every decision that you make. So do you want to be remembered as leaders who stand for intellectual freedom, critical thinking, and mutual respect, or do you want to turn a blind eye to the needs and voices in your community? Because we are watching.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Daphne Gamble.
I would like to speak to you about the books which you are deciding on today. In 1973, the Supreme Court created the Miller test, which is used to determine obscenity. The Tennessee Age-Appropriate Materials Act is a direct violation of this ruling and thus unconstitutional and invalid since federal law is above state law. The act is similar to the Murfreesboro Decency Ordinance, which was struck down in courts and resulted in the city paying a $500,000 settlement. I do applaud the board's decision to appoint a committee of library media specialists to review the material, and I would encourage you to implement the committee's recommendations. Librarians are trained professionals who are more qualified to determine whether or not a book should remain on shelves than the board. The members of the committee have also read the text in its entirety, unlike members of the board. I would also like to remind you that under RCS policy, book challenges are limited to 1 per challenge, and a single person can only challenge 5 books a year. RCS policy also states that challenge materials will remain available during the review process and only removed if they have been deemed to be inappropriate. I hope you will follow the recommendations of the committee and retain the books being discussed today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Elizabeth Shepard.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you again tonight, and my teenager, I'm sure, would appreciate saying thanks to Dr. Sullivan for the snow day tomorrow. I'm here as a Blackman High School parent and also as a public school librarian. I wanted to use my time tonight to shine a spotlight on a group of teachers that often prefer to avoid it altogether, your elementary, middle, and high school librarians. RCS has a phenomenal group of librarians who are the absolute best at what they do. I can say this with confidence because I know many of them personally and professionally. I have served with them on the board of the Tennessee Association of School Librarians. I have attended countless professional developments led by them and always left those sessions with pages of notes and a renewed motivation and excitement that I can take back to my library. When I need book recommendations, or when I'm struggling with lesson plans, or when I just want to wander around Barnes & Noble with some of my favorite people, these are the ones I'm texting. They love reading, they love their students, and they are incredibly good at what they do. I want to personally thank Dr. Chastain and Ms. Benavides for all of their hard work, and each of the librarians in Rutherford County for the phenomenal job they do every single day, and especially for their willingness and professionalism in assisting with the process that you all will begin deciding on tonight. On tonight's agenda, 10 RCS library books are on the chopping block, and the 7 of you are the ones holding the axe. Tonight, you will decide their fate. This is just the beginning of a process that will involve scores of books and take months to complete. I know it's not a responsibility you take lightly. I know this because you have asked for help. Great leaders know that in order to succeed, they cannot do it alone. It takes a village to make decisions like the ones you're making tonight, and I'm so proud of those you have entrusted to help you, the most qualified experts you could ever ask for, librarians. Time and again, I've heard you say how much you appreciate your librarians, that what they do is important, and that they are valued members of RCS. Those same librarians have been working hard since the moment the list of challenged books dropped, and now they have presented you with the first of many thorough and detailed recommendations. I sincerely hope that you will back up your words with action and vote to stand by the recommendations your highly qualified librarians have given you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Brian Schuster.
Thank you. I'd like to open with a prayer. So if you would, please bow your heads and close your eyes with me. Heavenly Father, I thank you for the opportunity that we have to work together as a community. I thank you for the freedom that we have to assemble here today in peace. You have blessed us, God. I thank you for Dr. Sullivan and his humble leadership. I thank you for the way that he leads with integrity. I thank you for Ms. Darby, Mr. Vaught, Ms. Shawn, Ms. Maxwell, Mr. Vaughn, Ms. Rosales, and Mr. Tidwell. Thank you for our teachers, custodians, coaches, the administrators, and the librarians who work hard each day to provide a positive and high-quality education for our children. God bless their homes, their families, and the work of their hands. Lord, help our community to become unified through the power of your Holy Spirit. Help us to give up of ourselves and to submit to you. We ask for your blessing on our community in Jesus' holy name. Amen.
Amen.
I want to take just a moment to first thank our librarians who shared on Tuesday a comprehensive plan to review and vet the book submitted in November, so thank you. And I want to thank our board who are working so hard on this issue. If we've learned nothing else over the past several months discussing library books, it is that our community is passionate about our children. They're a gift, they're tender, and we hope for better days in their future. We're sowing seeds with our kids, and they will grow up becoming what we expose them to. They're the seeds, but we're the soil. It's important for us to consider carefully the legacy that we're leaving with them and what we want to be known for. Each vote etches another mark into the granite, and we, the public, are watching and keeping track of the records decided upon here. I'm a gentle and loving person and would gladly step into traffic for anyone in this room, but I won't substitute my children for anyone here. I don't think you would either. But because of that love, I will continue to stand here and give up whatever I have to fight for their purity. And I would like to ask anyone else in this room who agrees with me to please stand now. This is not about intimidation. This is about representation. We're watching, we're listening. We remember how you will cast your vote when we go to cast ours. Please take a stand to protect our children from content that is harmful to them. And please use your authority to leave a legacy of good soil for our kids. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Ms. Heather Cook.
Thank you for allowing me to share what is on my heart concerning the review process regarding the books to be allowed in our schools' libraries. I pray that we all will have open minds and hearts to receive direction to make the right choice regarding what we encourage children to read. The children that will be affected by the decisions made have been entrusted to our care by God, our Creator. The same God that we referred to in the Pledge of Allegiance that I'm so thankful we all stood and said together earlier. The same God of this book that one nation under him was founded upon. So as one nation under God, I truly believe that we should all want what he tells us in his word that he wants for his children. Luke 17 tells us that Jesus said, "Temptations to sin are sure to come, but woe to the one through whom they come. It would be better for him to have a millstone hung around their neck and cast into the sea than that they should cause one of these little ones to sin. Proverbs 22:6 says, "We are to train up children in the way they should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it." And in Matthew and Mark, we're told that Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them." We're also told in Matthew that children have specific angels assigned to them that hold great value in the kingdom of heaven. Needless to say, he made it abundantly clear that he cares about and is very attentive to what happens to his children. So concerning the books that are under review, I believe that we should not endorse or encourage children to read anything that contradicts what God says. Children are a gift from God, and our assignment is to help shape their character with things like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, to equip them to pursue His purposes for their lives. In closing, I just want to say, let them be children. Let's enable and encourage them to preserve their innocence. They are exposed to enough evil in this fallen world without it being endorsed and encouraged in our schools' libraries. Let's teach and encourage them to seek after God and His eternal kingdom. This earth will soon pass away. Our lives are mere vapors in the grand scheme of things. One day we all will stand before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords and answer for what we have done. And I pray that we, along with the children entrusted to our care, will hear our Father say, "Well done." Thank you for your time, and God bless you.
Thank you. Next, we have legal.
We have one transfer student under discipline. The board has been requested to admit a transfer student from another school system under discipline. This student was expelled for intentional repeated harassment of school staff. According to policy 6.318, the board may deny admissions of any student except those in state custody when a student transfers from another school system under suspension or expulsion. Director of Schools' recommendation is to deny.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
To approve the denial.
To approve the denial?
Approve to deny.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure we're clear. Okay. And Mr. Tidwell seconded? Ms. Rosales seconded. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have Human Resources.
This is a request for one additional nursing staff due to increasing medical procedures at one of our larger high schools. This is Oakland High School. The Health Services Department is requesting one new school nurse position. Recommended motions to approve one additional school nurse position to cover increasing medical needs. As we get a little bit more information about fast growth funds and outcome funding, you may have a couple more requests in the next month or so for a couple of positions. But this is one that's needed right away.
I'm sure. I'll entertain a motion.
To approve.
Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the annual agenda.
And this is the review of the fifth section, which is personnel. Tennessee School Board Association's Board of Distinction program recognizes school boards for their work. School boards that seek this designation must meet specified requirements in 4 key areas: planning, policy, promotion, and board development. One of their requirements is an annual review and maintenance of the entire policy manual. As our board knows, we do have policy manual and policy review by the Tennessee School Board Association to make sure we meet all required laws and rules and procedures as well. So this is just the annual review of Section 5. We'll move to Section 6, and we do have a policy meeting next Wednesday at 5 o'clock.
So we don't need a vote on that. So next, we have the Charter Review Committee.
You have a charter review committee that is required by policy. We have 2 charter letters of intent that are, if the charter schools choose to apply, their application is due by 11:59 on February 3rd, and the committee is before you. So the recommended motion is to approve the 2025 Charter Review Committee as presented.
Comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. Thank you, Ms. Sharp. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Engineering and Construction.
First, we have Poplar Hill Elementary grading change order number 2. Engineering Construction has agreed to the final grading change request for demo plus construction per our letter dated August 7th, 2024. Change order number 2 is to be for $35,850. This will complete the grading package contract for bid number 3711. Recommended motions to approve the change order number 2 for demo plus as requested and presented.
Any comments or questions?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have number 2.
Eagleville Soccer Field Work Request. Principal Tim Pettigo is requesting to regrade the property adjacent to the school for a soccer field. The grading process, equipment, and labor is being donated, and the school will be responsible for the cost of the fuel needed. Estimated cost is $2,000. As part of this project, the school will begin to raise funds for an irrigation system, and the cost for the appropriate 2-inch tap meter and the $30,000 estimated for the field system. This work will require to have TDEC approval. The request is at no cost to the board. Engineering Construction has reviewed this request and has no objection. Mr. Pettigo did ask for me to let the board know that he would have been here, but they have high school and middle school athletics today, so he is having to cover middle school athletics tonight. Recommended motion is to approve the Eagleville soccer field request as presented.
Any comments or questions? Thank you,
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Darby. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 3, Laverne High.
Laverne High School Nutrition Painting Project. School Nutrition Department has been reviewing options to upgrade the appearance of the cafeteria serving line areas for a couple of years. Currently, they are requesting to begin a school serving line project with LHS as the first one. The cost for this project is $45,200.75 and will come from the fund balance and will not require additional funds. Engineering Construction Department has reviewed the request and has no objection. Recommended motions to approve the school nutrition request for LHS as presented.
Any comments or questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn, and thank you, Ms. Darby.
That was Ms. Sharp.
Ms. Sharp, I'm so sorry, I am. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 4.
Daniel McKee exterior and interior mural paint request. Principal Nicole Sturbins is requesting to allow the Experience Community Church to clean and paint the exterior of the building and paint the entry area murals in the interior. Total cost for the request is $19,300, is being funded by the church at no cost to the board. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and has no objection. Recommended motions to approve the Daniel McKee paint request as presented. And again, as we did Tuesday, I want to thank Experience Community Church because I believe this is the beginning of a great partnership with them.
Absolutely, and I cannot wait to see it. Any comments or questions?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. And thank you, Mr. Vaughn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have resolutions.
There are 2 resolutions before the board for its consideration tonight. The first of these is relating to TISA funding and the fast growth components of the TISA funding. We read this Tuesday night. The resolution portion of this says that we're asked the Board of Education is resolving to request the Tennessee General Assembly consider the full funding for the fast growth stipend and fast growth infrastructure components of TISA by appropriating the amount of $50 million for the 2025-2026 fiscal year to ensure that all eligible school districts receive the full value of their calculated stipends and for their percentage of the fast growth infrastructure. So that's the first resolution you have before you tonight, and Mr. Tidwell did a lot of work on this resolution.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
Yeah, I think the intention of this was good for a lot of the districts. It simply was a first-year thing, and they needed to figure out what the funding was and what that ended up being. I have talked to some people at the governor's office, and there does appear to be an appetite for it. You know, that doesn't always happen when we send resolutions up there, but there appears to be some. So hopefully this comes to fruition, but we won't know until the end.
Absolutely.
With that, I move to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. Second by Ms. Sharp. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Appreciate you doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tidwell. Motion passes.
The second resolution is one pertaining to a House bill, which is House Bill 22, which is one which we read Tuesday night. But I'll go back to remind the board what it was. But so the proposed House bill, which has not yet been adopted but is being proposed in the House of Representatives for the state, is asking to amend TCA 844-112 to basically provide that a governing body shall, for each public meeting, reserve a period for public comment to provide the public with the opportunity to comment on, number one, matters that are germane to the items on the agenda for the meeting, and on any matter that is germane to the jurisdiction of the governing body, regardless of whether that item is on the agenda. So this proposed House bill broadens the current law, which, under the current law, which we've not been following in our county because we've not been violating it either. The current state law has allowed governing bodies to restrict public comments to only items on the agenda. Our board here has never done that. You've allowed people to come and talk about any kind of school board issues before this body that they chose to comment on during public speaking. So this really has never been a matter that we've had a problem with here in our system, because we've always allowed people to talk about anything which pertains to education. But there has been some instances in the state where this has become an issue. So this new House bill is proposing to expand the right for public comment based on the statute to provide that people can comment on any matters that are germane to the jurisdiction of the governing body, regardless of whether it's on the agenda or not. So this broadens the current statute. So the proposed resolution that the board is considering tonight is asking for the Board of Education to express its support for the principles and intent of House Bill 0022, which aims to promote greater public participation and uphold the values of transparency and accountability in governance. So that's the resolution you're being asked to act on tonight.
Any comments or questions?
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Ms. Rosales.
Jeff, I had asked if you could look into that governing body will include their state legislatures, since they are a governing body, and currently our state legislatures, you're not able to just show up and speak about anything. It has to be items on the agenda, and for an item to be an agenda, there has to be a bill of some sort that needs to be debated upon. And I had asked you if you had any insights to that.
The rules of the Senate and House are different than those that govern other public bodies, and they would not be squarely under the governmental body definition here in the statute. So because they have a different set of rules, and they've got things that arise under Tennessee state constitution that applies to them that's different than us as local county and city type entities. So a governing body, it's not clear that this will be applicable to state legislature. If there's an intent to have this also applicable to state legislature, there needs to be some additional language thrown into the bill to make that clear.
Then I support this, but I would like to add that provision into the resolution requiring the state lawmakers, since they are creating the bill and the governance for us and how we run and conduct our business, that it will also be included. So the language will be provision there to include state lawmakers and all committees thereof.
Ms. Maxwell?
Mr. Tidwell.
So I did a little bit of research into this as well, got some feedback from TSBA. So it is correct that the General Assembly doesn't have this same provision, but they're also not considered, as Mr. Rita just mentioned, technically a governing body underneath the definitions of the statute. And there's some reasons for that. They do create rules for the subcommittees and the committees, and those committees can open up and decide whether they're going to have public comment, or whether you have to sign up a certain amount of time, or 2 days before, or the day of. So there is an option there. But also there is some case law, and it's Mayhew versus Wilder, where this was kind of debated back and forth whether or not a current General Assembly can be bound by the rules of a previous General Assembly, which is why they have their rule creations each year. And part of that was dealing with this public comment. So even if they wanted to, they couldn't restrict it without binding the next General Assembly. So there's already some case law on this, so I'm not in support of this amendment. Much more so, the reason that I was very concerned about this and is how it would affect our local school board. As you'd mentioned earlier, Jeff, that our school board has been pretty open in making sure that as long as it's under the purview of the school board, they could speak about it. But it was failed to mention that the policy committee at the Rutherford County School Board did vote to have items brought before a public comment would be restricted by this particular law before the language was added straight to items that are on the agenda. And that did pass, I don't know if there were 16 members, I think it was 13-3. It just did not get carried forth after it passed the policy committee. It didn't get carried forward. So that was kind of the concern that I had. I didn't want that to come popping back up. This strengthened the language of it, and I feel like it's good where it's at. It's accomplishing the goal that we have for us locally. So I wouldn't support the amendment, and I would just ask that we pass it in support of this.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Ms. Rosales.
Thank you. There's going to be some clarity about what you just said. Yes, they do allow public comments, but it's not like it's open to anyone and everyone who has any other topic. If there is a topic that is happening within their jurisdiction, which there are issues that are state matters, and I'm going to say, for example, RESL population growing, I couldn't just show up in a hearing today, sign up the day before, and try to get my name to talk to them and say, hey, we've got a situation happening here, unless they pick up the topic in the form of a bill that discusses that and it makes it into the agenda. So no, it's not the same as us, anyone here coming and speaking at all. And just like Mr. Reed just said, that there is no definition that says exactly what governing body is. And second of all, there was a lot of discussions when it came to allowing public comments beyond the items on the agenda when it comes to meetings like this, because it was prohibiting First Amendment rights. I think that it sounds like there's a little bit of a double standard, in my opinion, when it comes to First Amendment rights, because I am a taxpayer as well, and I should be able to show up to the assembly and be able to speak on topics that are not germane to the agenda. They created the law, and now they're telling us how do we run our meetings, but then we don't want to stand and tell them that they too should do the same thing, and not limiting our First Amendment rights. It sounds like that's what some of us may be advocating for.
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
Yeah, just to get clarity on that, TCA 8-44-102 is actually the definitions, and including that, it describes what a governing body means, and you will not find the General Assembly listed in there. So I'm not disagreeing, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm not disagreeing that they are not operating the exact same way as we are, but I described as to why they came to that conclusion. As far as governing bodies, county commission, school board, board of directors, several other bodies listed here, I think this is a positive thing, and I certainly do support it moving forward for our own personal elected body.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr. Rosales.
Jeff Reed, governing body. Will it include the state legislation? It's not clear. It's not because it's not clear. They will have to go back and define what is governing body. So that is not applicable, what you just said.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
So in reference to the bill, it does reference what a governing body is. So I'll give you an example. So they can put in a statute. They can put in a statute and they can say you can only have clear lunch boxes brought to schools. We'll just say that as an example. That's a law that gets passed. And in the statute, it says, and definitions will be described of what a clear lunchbox is through this particular statute or this definition. It will be attached to the law. And attached to that law, it'll say clear lunchboxes are of this particular size or smaller, this description, and that's what the definition is. But in that definition, whatever it says, that is how it relates and correlates to the law. This TCA 8-44-102 is directly connected to this language. So I'm not making up what a governing body is. It tells you what the governing body is.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr. Rosales.
No due respect to you, Mr. Tidwell, but I've asked legal counsel, which is Mr. Jeff Reed. He's spoken. As far as I know, your credentials don't include Esquire by your name. So our legal counselor spoke and said that this or no definition when it pertains to
Yes.
governing body.
Ms.
And that
Rosales.
is the point that I'm trying.
Ms. Rosales. Okay. It's been a point of order.
Madam,
Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
I'm sorry, you're going to rule on the point.
Yes.
Are you going to rule on the point?
Yes, I am.
Then I want to discuss after you rule.
Okay. Thank you. Do we want to continue, or do we want to stop?
We're not debating Mr. Tidwell's credentials here.
Is that what the point was?
Yes.
That's, well, now I'm going to say this right there. That wasn't a true point of order. If you want to rise to a point of order, state the point, and then let the chair rule on it.
Well, my point of order is we're not here to debate Mr. Tidwell's credentials. And I believe Mr. Tidwell did cite TSBA, who is our legal counsel, even more so oftentimes than Mr. Reed.
Ms. Maxwell.
I understand.
Say one more thing.
Yes.
I think what Mr. Tidwell said is the same thing which I said.
I agree.
The state
Yes.
legislature is not within the definition of governing body for the purpose of the statute. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think Mr. Tidwell said that he acknowledges and agrees that the state legislature is not within the scope of the definition of governing body in this statute.
That is correct.
Ms. Maxwell.
Time out.
Just a moment. Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
Y'all keep jumping in over there. Y'all called time out on that end of the table down there.
Exactly.
Both y'all playing lawyer right now. Just hold on. Couple of questions, Jeff. Who brought this to us?
Mr. Tidwell proposed this resolution.
Second, who is the sponsor of the bill?
Elaine Davis.
Did they request us to endorse this? Was there a request sent from that legislator for us to vote on this?
I am not aware of any request from Ms. Davis.
Okay.
Ms. Maxwell.
Yes, Ms. Rosales.
I think the point is that in the statute, it doesn't clearly define as the state legislatures. And what I'm saying is that we need to go back to them and define if the governing body does include the state legislatures, because currently, even with the definition that you read, doesn't include, because no one has asked them if it's included until right now we're challenging that. And we're talking about First Amendment rights of what we can and speak and not speak at a meeting where there are going to be rules being made and laws that they're going to be implementing that is going to impact the entire state of Tennessee.
Madam Chair. Yes, Ms. Darby, after Mr. Vaughn, please. Mr. Vaughn.
Yeah, we're all going to have to rush and get some bread and milk tonight, but I don't understand. I mean, we're sitting here talking about something that they're not going to pay attention to what we say anyway. We have no control of what they do. It's like Mr. Reed said, they got their own rules. And I support this thing, but again, to be concerned about what they do or whatever, when I'm not going to pay any attention to it, I just don't see us spending time doing it,
Ms. Darby.
I was just going to state, a resolution has been brought forth. Ms. Rosales proposed amending it. The author of the resolution has stated he does not wish to do that. So can we just vote on the amendment and vote on the resolution and move on at this point? Bless you.
Yes, we can.
There has to be a motion.
I'm fixing to ask, would anyone like to make a motion? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the resolution as it is.
Second.
Second by Mr. Tidwell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next, we go to the bus contract discussion.
If there's anything else anyone?
Is there anything else that anybody want to talk about? We had a... Okay.
Ms.
Next, we
Maxwell.
have the
Ms.
library.
Maxwell.
Yes, I'm
I'll
sorry.
just say, can we do that again?
We can.
Is that something that we can add on
Probably in February, I would
Yes,
say.
because there will be a lot of changes
Yes.
between now.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
I'll get with Mr. Reed after he gets with their attorney to set probably one of our February board meetings after they have some time to go back and forth. Is that all right, Mr. Reed? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and everyone for staying late to listen to our bus drivers. I think we made up some progress between the two people and everything, so thank y'all. Thank you, Madam Chair, for
No problem. Our pleasure. Next, we have the library books, and they've been painstakingly gone through by our librarians, and we want to thank them so much for taking the time to do this over the last couple of months. And we are going to vote on each book individually with a roll call vote. Okay, Mr. Sullivan, or do you?
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you can, Mr. Vaughn.
You know, I think our librarians are the best anywhere, like we talked about. They're phenomenal people and do a phenomenal job. But, you know, it really bothers me that, you know, I personally just, I've been in education for over 50 years, and my whole goal mainly was to protect the kids and to make it a safe environment for them. And I just can't see allowing anything in a library anywhere that could be a stumbling block to any kid. And to be honest with you, these books, in my opinion, do that. And, you know, people say, well, they're okay and not okay. It's sort of like drinking a cup of water and putting a little bit of poison in it. Who's going to drink it? And that's what I feel like these books are. It's just a little bit of poison. And these kids, I've had to deal with them, whether they got ideas from the book they read and cause them to do things that is really harmful to them. And I just can't, I just want to say, please consider that, because if it's a stumbling block to a kid and it creates an issue, why take the chance? There's so many great books, and you know, I've got 3 degrees, and I've never had to read any of these books, and I'm really glad I didn't. So I think there's so many other books out there that can do the same thing without all this trash that we had to look at in these books, because, in my opinion, that's what they are. So consider that when you vote, please.
The first book is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. It is recommended to be retained in the 8th grade and up. Have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Tardy.
Dr. Chastain, I don't know if you're the appropriate person to respond to this or not, but I did just want to ask, as I went through this in some more detail, some of the additional context that was listed on this book. We had 2 different sources recommend for 14 and up, another one that recommended it for grades 9 and up, and it's currently only in our high schools. So my question kind of came down to, if the majority of what I'm seeing here is kind of pushing that high school age, and that's where it currently is, why the recommendation wouldn't be to leave it in the high school, and why we're actually moving it down to 8th grade and high school.
We can certainly adjust that. I think everybody I understand your point. One of the things that probably, I'm going to guess, and Ms. Benavides can correct me, I believe some of these titles were originally in middle and high, and then our middle school librarians made it, which is within their purview and what we would like them to do. They make those decisions based on their expertise and have decided the book is best suited in high school. So this, you're seeing that it would be appropriate in their minds for 8th grade and up. They've made the choices in their own libraries to not have it circulate in our middle schools, but that is certainly something that the board could make recommendations to have it only in high school, out of an abundance of caution.
We can do that. We can say that we just want to keep it in high school, and I believe even Williamson County said 11th and 12th grade for some, too. We can make that distinction.
No, that's okay. I was just going to read this really quick before we get on to the actual voting portion, which is just to remind everyone of the law. Part of what it speaks to, it says a procedure for the development of a library collection at each school that is appropriate for the age and maturity levels of the students who may access the materials, and that is suitable for and consistent with the educational mission of the school. And I will say, for myself, going back to the way the law reads and looking at some of these, wondering what the educational mission is for some of these, and does that align with the educational mission that Rutherford County Schools wants to present to its students. And I just think it's important that we keep those things in mind, because at the end of the day, we are responsible for the content we are allowing access to through our school buildings. What happens outside of those buildings is not my business, but what happens within them is our business, and we are responsible for that. So I just think it's important that we keep that in mind as we look at these going forward. Sorry, Mr.
Thank you, Ms. Darby.
I mean, I agree. Personally, I just see them, I'd really like to see them taken out. I just don't see the educational benefit. And I'm like Ms. Darby. Is this what we want our system to be viewed as, that we approve this stuff? I mean, if you read this, I don't know, maybe I'm just too old-fashioned, but I can't see how this book or any of the rest of them could be of any value. And I don't want our people and our parents to think that this is, I don't want them to view that this is the way our system is. Because we're above this type of thing, I think. And I can't believe there's not another book out there that doesn't have this trash in there that would do just as good a job. So, can we vote to?
Well, I have to have a motion. Yeah, Mr. Vaughn.
Well, that was my question. How do you want an individual motion on each book? What is your?
I was going to take, that's how we did it last time. We individual motion on each book, and then Ms. Williams will do a roll call.
I'm going to jump right in here then. We're going to get this on. I'm going to move that we retain the first book under the recommendation of the media specialist, high school and up, or high school only.
Do we have a second? I can second. Right? I second it.
Mr. Vaught?
Oh, hang on. I'm going to go back to discussion. I just made the motion. Now, if you get into this and you look at it, Publishers Weekly recommends the book, School Library Journal recommends the book. The book has received multiple awards, including the Stonewall Award winner, Prince Award winner, Pura Belpré Award winner, Lambda Award winner. This book has received multiple starred professional reviews, including Hornbook Magazine, Publishers Weekly, and School Library Journal. Here's my observation about all of this. The world is a cruel place. I'm going to state that right now. I myself believe we need to do everything we can to shield our children as best we can, but it comes down to parents doing their job. We have created a structure within this county that we have a K through 5 school system that, and I'm going to say it this way, that kind of babies, nurtures, and all that kind of thing. Then we have a middle school, and not to drag Mr. Lee into this, but I visited with him and got an observation of the transportation contract that we're having to deal with. But he led me to a couple of conclusions there. Our biggest riders are middle school riders. And it made me ponder, why is that? Well, I have to believe that parents are turning their children loose somewhat. They're not babying them as much as they were. They're not dropping them off at school. They're not picking them up at school. They're making them rise to being young adults. And that responsibility includes possibly learning how to get on a bus and get off a bus. I don't know. And then they fall off in high school because they are independent, because they do get wheels. They do get a license. And so you look at this, and you know, we voted to allow the media specialists, and there's 60-something of them in our county, and I value their opinion. I really do. You know, they've gone to school. I think most of them, if not all of them, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, all of them have masters in communications. They know how to look at this stuff. I'm not smart enough to do it. I'll be the first one. I read a lot. I'm a history buff. I love history. That's one reason I read the Bible a lot. It's the greatest history book that was ever written. But my concern from day one is when you start taking any of these books out of the library, where do we end up 20 years from now? You know, we think we're isolated as Christians in this country, but after visiting Smyrna High School and figuring out there's 32 different languages spoke down there, most of you know, some of you know that I work in the auction and real estate business, and we go down on Nolensville Pike. There's dozens of different religious groups down there. You know, we cannot simply isolate ourselves from the world. And if we do that, and this is, in my view, the first step, when you take the ability of young people away to educate themselves, and you're isolated, and then they're not ready for the world. We live in a world economy now. We don't live in a Rutherford County economy. They have to be prepared for bad stuff. I don't like it. I had to do it with my kids. We had to have a lot of conversations. We had to go to the barn, as I called it. Those of you that know me know that I grew up on a dairy farm, and there's a lot of things that get explained in the dairy barn. I'm not going to get into that right now, but my father, God rest his soul, did a good job of doing that, and I think I've done that with Jackson and Chandler. And for me to sit idly by and not say something about trying to educate kids, I just feel at a loss right here that we're creating a false narrative that we're protecting them for some reason. I'll say this. I believe this. Let the teachers teach, and the parents need to parent. If you don't want your child reading a book, you put it on a list with that librarian. You forbid them to bring it home. That's fine. I'm all for you. You make that decision. But don't make the decision for the other 52,000 kids in this county. That's what I'm going to say about this. And I'll hush now.
Ms. Darby.
Respect where you're coming from, Mr. Vaught. And as a parent myself, I don't want anyone telling me how to parent my kids as much as I don't want to tell anyone else how to parent theirs. But I will say this. We are responsible for the content we are allowing our students access to at the end of the day. There is no way for a parent to know every book in a library or whether their child went during library time, sat at the table and read it and never checked it out either. And there are some topics and some content that is absolutely 100% up to a parent when and how their child should be introduced to that information. That is not the school's responsibility. It is our responsibility to educate children on very specific subjects and not on others, because that is a parent's right and a parent's job. Part of the problem is the type of content that has become available to minors. At the end of the day, these are still children. I do not want to be responsible for introducing certain topics and certain information to children. That is up to their parents, how and when that gets introduced and discussed. It is more appropriate at some ages for some children because of what they may have experienced in their life than others. That's not the education system's prerogative to decide when that is for each and every child. That is a parent's decision. It belongs with that parent. We should have things on our shelves in our school that are appropriate for the children without question. If there is question, that is when it gets kicked to the people that have been elected by the community to then make those decisions about whether or not it is appropriate. I think part of the narrative gets twisted here that, oh, well, they won all these awards and there are all these great books. There's nobody disputing those things here. But because a book received an award doesn't make it appropriate for a child. So the narrative that, it's a great book and that that's what's being disputed is incorrect. The question is going to fall down to, is it appropriate to be providing that content to children, because that is what they are. And that is where the base lies. And as a board, we have a responsibility to look at it from the viewpoint of the law. We are bound by that law. It either meets the definitions of the law or it doesn't. If it does meet the definition of the law, we are bound to remove it from our shelves. That's not isolating somebody. There are still 1,000,001 ways to get that particular book. This is not, despite what some people want to spin it as, what happened a very long time ago. We're not trying to control access to it outside of the building that we are responsible for. So.
Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
And I agree with you 100%. The parents don't need to do that, and it's not our job to do it. However, we have asked our 60 librarians, and they put it on a spreadsheet, and they went through the Miller test. They went through all these tests and recommendations. They pulled some, but this one they recommended. So I'm confused now. If you're not going to take the recommendation of the professionals in the deal, do you believe our professionals have an agenda that they're trying to force something on somebody that they shouldn't? I'm confused right here. You and I are in agreement on 90% of this right here.
I did not vote in favor of the librarians doing this. I was the one person that did not vote in favor of it, number one. Okay. Number two, I have no disrespect for our librarians. I don't think hardly any of them personally. I'm not up here saying that anybody has any kind of agenda either. I do think, and I think Dr. Chastain would agree, that there are still some very subjective definitions within the law, which means it is going to come down to, I'll say this, patently offensive means obviously offensive. What is obviously offensive to me might not be obviously offensive to Ms. Sharp or to yourself. So when I look at it, rather than looking at a broad, patently offensive way, I would look at it and say, in the context of providing this material to a minor, would it be found to be patently offensive in that context? Because that is the context in which we're speaking about it in. So for me, it's not about whether I trust or believe our librarians. I think we're all human, and I think we all have different opinions. And I think a lot of our librarians have a true love and passion for what they do, which I appreciate. However, we may disagree, and my opinion about what is appropriate to be providing to a minor and what isn't can be different from what theirs is. And just because my opinion is different doesn't mean that I'm not going to voice that because they're a librarian and I'm not.
Ms. Maxwell?
Just a moment, Mr. Vaughn. Yes, Ms. Chastain.
I just wanted to jump in really quickly, since part of our job is to make sure you have every bit of information and it's as clear as possible from our end. The educational mission of that clause and what a library serves to do, I do want to clarify that within the selection criteria, within our state rules that align with the law, it goes beyond just the academic standards. So the space of the library includes recreational reading, which I think we all agree is important, various formats, work on its entirety, represent a variety of viewpoints that foster critical thinking, problem solving, provide a global perspective, demonstrate cultural relevance, mirror diversity. There's several things, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to cloud the statements that you've made. I just want to make sure that we're in understanding of that the library will serve beyond just the standards. And then I think we all agree that the diversity of thought is what makes this great. So we all are here for the kids to make sure they have access to the materials that are appropriate and meet these educational purposes. But I just want to make sure we clarified the role of the library itself beyond just the academic standards.
Thank you. Mr. Vaughn.
You know, the librarians come at it from a literary standpoint, which I understand and respect it. Great. But, you know, we've got a responsibility to come at it from a moral standpoint. You know, I wish I'd known, and maybe next time we bring these books, gosh, if I'd like to read some of the excerpts of this book, and how in the world people can think that they're appropriate for kids is beyond me, because I've had to deal with kids, and I can tell you that it's sort of like selling beer on the lunch line. May not be too bad, you know, it's healthy. Drinking beer is pretty good for some folks, but why would you tempt kids like that? And again, I don't know. I mean, I've got a degree above a master's degree, like librarians. I mean, you're well trained. But again, I just can't believe that books that we had when we went to school didn't have this type of stuff in there. We didn't have to worry about this. And we got whatever education, the value that these books, they say they do. We got the same education, or better. And my theory is, hey, if you don't want to read it in front of your mama, why would you do it? And that's what some of this stuff in these books is just, there's no way in this world I'd let my kids read stuff like that.
Well, the motion on the floor is to approve this one book. And the notes from the review say there's no nudity as defined by Title 39. The word masturbate is used on page 219, and on page 30 there's a euphemism used about shaking hands with your best friend. So that's the end of this one. So if you want to say, everybody wants to say their comments for each individual one, that's what's in this one. So can I call for the question on this one book? And
Yes, you can.
Let's move on.
Let's move on. Please, roll call vote, please.
Would you like me to repeat the motion?
Yes, please.
The motion is to retain Aristotle and Dante upon recommendation from our media specialist for high school and up. Mr. Vaught?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mrs. Darby?
No.
Ms. Sharp?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
I have a question. Are we voting on you called a question, so we
Vote on the question first.
Oh, we didn't vote on the question.
Oh, so sorry. I'm sorry.
Just moving on with the vote. That's my point.
We'll just order.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the rule right here, but I think we're voting on the book.
I think we just need to vote on the book.
Mr. Tidwell?
Oh.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
The noes have it.
Next, we have heroin. And it was reviewed and recommended to retain in 8th grade or up. Do I have a motion?
Ms. Maxwell,
Yes, Ms. Rosales.
can we start having discussion, or we're going to wait for?
I thought we were going to have the
and
motion
then
first and then the discussion, but
Madam Chair,
Yes,
did you
yes.
say heroin, correct?
yeah.
I think it says retain high schools only.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I turned the page and these were out of order. I apologize.
That's right.
I'm so sorry. There it is. Yes, I'm so sorry. Yes,
ready for a
it says, yes, retain in high schools only. My apologies.
I would move to follow the media specialist's recommendation to retain high school level only.
I second.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Ms. Rosales.
Okay, so I submitted all these books simply because in the last meeting, there was a lot of conversation and accusations that we are having pornographic material, and there was even sentiments that were echoed within this board as well. So I figured this would be the time to come up with a game plan and tackle this issue if it indeed is as important as is being conveyed. So therefore, I was in publishing for about 20-something years, and I know the process of what a lot of things go through when it comes to literary awards, publishing, and all that. And I've done a lot of research into the public with the young adult literature, and we're talking about themes that some of us are saying is not age appropriate, but in the truth and reality of it, if we're talking about this particular age group, it's been happening since the 1960s. This is nothing new at all. In fact, the very first book written by an author who has received multiple accolades, and I even had a friend who is the most godliest woman that I could ever meet, very spirit-filled, told me that she had written a book for this particular author. And when I looked at the author that she was talking about, because she was much younger than I, spoke about themes that are relatable to students that are going into this age group. And so to sit here and to say that this is not happening and this is all new all of a sudden, a lot of these books were on the shelves even when I was in high school, even when you were in high school, and even some of us. And it's come to a point where it's become a lot of politicized, and my intent wasn't to create a political thing and getting books to people to come here. My point wasn't to try to pin a board member against another board member simply because they don't agree with the voting or whatever. My whole purpose of this was just to simply say, let's tackle this. If this is a problem, it's this issue, and allow the librarians to weigh in and as defined by the law in the definitions, and that's what they did. So I really appreciate all the hard work that the librarians have done. It's very commendable. I know it was very painful in the process, but I really do appreciate that. And so with that being said, are we discussing about the book of heroin?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this book particularly, I have read it, and it may or may not fall within the definition. But as a parent that had a daughter that went through a similar situation like the heroine and the protagonist in the book, it was a little bit difficult to read it for me because it drudged up a lot of things that were happening within our household. And you may agree with me, and you may not, and that's fine. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that some of our kids may be going through issues that they have no idea that they are going through that. And I wish we had a way where if a kid were to check out something, that it'll be notified to the parent to know what type of book they are reading, and simply because when my daughter was struggling, she struggled a lot, and she dealt with this particular issue, and this is about drug use. Our librarians we can't expect our librarians to know what the heck is going on in every single child's home and what's happening. But I think that what could happen is that in the event like my child, who was dealing with drug use, it talks specifically about drug use. And if this book were to be notified and tell me that this was happening in her life, then as a parent, it will make me aware of what's really happening inside of what's really happening in her home. So I feel that there should be some books that should have parental consent. We should have some books that are, require that so that a parent may say what can be checked out or not checked out, because there may be things that your child may be going through that you have no idea, you're not aware of, but you can see if they're reading something about a particular topic that they may be struggling with right now. And so I will recommend and make an amendment to include, did we have a motion yet?
Yes.
So I would like to make an amendment to include with parental consent.
Okay.
I'll say one thing. I disagree. These books weren't on the shelves when I was in school, and that goes back a long time. And it's like putting poison in the water.
Ms.
If you don't
Sharp.
have it, it's not gonna matter. So
Ms. Sharp.
eliminate them.
You need a second. I'll second it. Ms. Rosales wants an amendment.
Okay, so I want to speak about the amendment. We are not allowed to do that in the law. The law states the books either have to be in or out. We cannot have a mature reading section. We've already discussed this before.
Ms. Maxwell, I'm not asking for a mature reading list. I'm simply asking for parental consent. Williamson County included in one of their books to include parental consent. I believe we need to include parents into the discussion of what they will allow or not allow to read.
Just for clarification.
This is not asking for mature reading lists. We're not asking to put them on a shelf. We're not asking to do any of that. We are simply saying, let's allow our parent to decide if they're going to allow a book that really does not meet the state standards of within the law. But it does talk about a pretty heavy topic when it comes to drug use, and our kids are going through drug use. My daughter got her and I, getting a little too raw at this point, took her very first pill of Adderall in the school building, not in my home.
Dr. Sullivan, is it true that Williamson County did have restrictions in parent?
I don't know, I don't know all the ins and outs of theirs.
Okay. Ms. Maxwell?
Mr. Reed? Can we vote to add this caveat, this amendment to the original motion?
Vote on there was a motion made to retain this book pursuant to the recommendations of the media specialist for high school.
Yes. Ms. Rosales wanted to do an amendment.
And I think the motion to amend was basically along the line of which will allow the book to be checked out with
Parental consent.
So I would think if the board chooses to add that to the motion, that's something, and that gets a majority vote, it can be added to the motion.
Okay.
So yes, you can vote on it.
It's okay. Thank you. So
Madam Chair?
Yes, Ms. Darby.
Ms. Rosales, can I ask for some clarification on what your expectation is when we attach that parental consent? Does that mean that it is not readily available on the shelf, and that if a child finds it in the card catalog and wants to look at it, that the librarian then has to get permission from the parent, so it's not readily available on the shelf?
Ms. Dr. Chastain, is that something that is possible, not be readily available on the shelf?
We set limitations, and we have certain catalogs that are, the short answer is yes. I mean, essentially we do this in mixed grade bands. We make sure that that students are only able to access the books that are within the grade range as appropriate. So it would essentially fall within something of that nature is what I'm envisioning that you mean. And we certainly are not afraid to invite parents to have a say in what their students read.
Ms. Maxwell.
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
Dr. Chastain, would that be an opt-in or opt-out? Like, would you be automatically opted in unless you opted out, or would it be vice versa?
This is one of those things that I'm glad we're at least discussing it. We've talked with our librarians, we've talked internally, we've talked with our provider of the software, we've talked with our student information system in the last few days, just seeing again, we're trying to be honest and not overpromise, because the last thing I want to do is promise that this book is not accessible, and then we go back on that promise somehow unintentionally. So yes, we can do a number of things. We can opt into entire library collection if a parent doesn't want their student to access the library at all. We certainly have, that parent has that right. We can set up something within Skyward that speaks with Destiny, which is our software provider with Follett, that already allows parents to see what their students have checked out if they log in with their student login credentials. We've done more investigating to figure out how we can send out push notifications that would make the parent aware of progress or late notices, all those things that are already part of library services. We don't yet know that we would be able to send a notification to you every time your student did check a book out, but we're looking into that, if that can be available. But yes, we can do either. We can do either.
There's some variants. I wouldn't want it to be an automatically opted in and you have to opt out. One of the things that was mentioned earlier is talking about parents. They certainly trust us to make the decision because they're not reading every word of every book. They're not going through the books that we have up here tonight. They're trusting us to make that decision. We're the closest ones, elected officials, to make that decision. So I might be interested in that potential idea. I would just prefer it to be an opt-in type situation. Obviously I've been on this topic for quite some time, and it's been fascinating to hear a lot of conversation about it. But I always read all the excerpts and everything that's the challenged content and try to come to a conclusion based on the law. This is not a book that I'm a fan of, but I have mainly been looking, when I have submitted books, at the sexually explicit. That's an umbrella term, obviously. Specific terms are involved with that. That's mainly what I've been looking at. And I didn't see that in this particular book. I'm not sure by the state's level, and I don't know, I'm speaking out loud. I'm not sure it can be removed. I think that it may be one of those situations where I would prefer that if it can be, taken out of circulation, but it can't be completely removed. There's maybe 11th or 12th graders that might have access to it via an opt-in type situation. Just throwing that out there.
If you don't have it in the library, you don't have to worry about it. We can solve this problem real quick.
Can I say something? It's probably not a book I would pick up off the shelf either. Complete disclosure, I had a son, and he didn't make it. He died. And we didn't know what he was doing. Nobody knew what he was doing. He hit it very, very well. He's probably the most popular athlete on his team, popular athlete, person at his school. And but I have to tell his story. We tell his story every year to different baseball teams, football teams, anybody, church groups, anybody, because he's not alone. These statistics don't lie. And I like the fact that this author visited high schools and spoke to children about what's going on. And it's been bad for a while, but it's been real bad since COVID. And a lot of these children feel like they don't know how to cope, and they turn to things they shouldn't have. I wish we'd known what Mitchell was doing, but we didn't. But if this book can help somebody, it may not be you. You may not be having the issue, but your buddy might be. So that's why I will be voting in favor to keep this book. We have a motion, and I believe that I seconded, and we have yes, Mr. Tidwell.
Do you mind repeating the motion and the amendment, or was there an amendment? Yes, you meant.
Motion was to approve heroin to retain high schools only, with the amendment that it be with parental consent. Okay, so.
Hang on. Amendment first?
We hadn't voted on the amendment.
No, we're going to vote on the amendment now.
We have a second on that motion to amend?
Second.
Ms. Maxwell.
Ms. Maxwell.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes.
I would like a point of clarification. In your motion, would this be an opt-in type situation where you have to opt your child in? Or would it be an opt-out, everybody's already opted in, and you have to intentionally opt your child out?
We could do either one. If you would like it to be an opt-in, you'd be an opt-in.
Would you be open to an amendment to opt in?
Sure.
I like to make amendment to opt in.
Second. Okay. So do we have 2 amendments, or can we talk?
So we got 2 amendments and a motion.
Okay.
Would you like to modify your amendment to include?
Yeah, I think it would be easier if I
Can we
just
combine the 2 is what I'm trying to
So
say.
I'm going to modify my amendment to say with parental consent, but with opt-in.
Okay. And I'll second that. Now we will vote on the amendment.
Ms. Sharp? Mr. Vaught? Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
Yeses have it.
Okay. Now we vote on the book. The book is Heroin.
So we have a vote to motion to retain.
Right, motion to
With
retain.
parental consent, with an opt-in parental consent arrangement.
All right, Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp? Mr. Vaught?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
The yeses have it to retain.
The next book we have is I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, and the recommendation is to retain in high schools only.
Madam Chairman, I would move that we follow the recommendation of the media specialist and retain it high school only.
I will second that. Do we have any discussion?
These books are so good. Why is it you have to have parental permission or what? I don't understand. A very good quality book, you don't need to have that. And I just can't believe these books are necessary for educational process. I don't know what value they have, period. I may be missing something, but I don't know what value they are.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
I'll just, it sounded like there was a reference back to the previous book, and I would just like to say that, I look at stuff very much through a legal lens, and as I mentioned before, my studies must have been in this actually explicit because I think that can be some of the most harmful, even though I think other subjects can be as well. But as far as what can be removed and what can't, I feel like we have threaded that needle very carefully, and I would like to continue that route. So each one is very, on this list, I will be multiple positions as we go throughout. I think you have to look at everyone very individually.
Thank you. Entertain a motion? Sorry. Yeah, okay, and I second it, sorry. So let's go ahead and let's vote on I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter.
Mrs. Darby?
No.
Mr. Vaught?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
That's a no.
Ms. Sharp? Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
No, do not retain.
Next, we have Shiver. It is recommended to retain for 8th grade and high schools. Of course, that can be modified to high school only. I do want to say that if you read here, it says it did not meet the criteria for obscenity or the terms as defined in the 3917-901 Tier 2 review. They believe it is age relevant for teen readers who enjoy fantasy and age-appropriate romance. So 8th grade and high school, but it can be amended to only high school if you would like.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
I would like to make the motion to to retain this at high school level only. That's my motion.
I'll second it. Any comments?
So the recommendation says retain 8th grade and high school.
No,
No,
high
he
school
just made a
only.
motion for just high school only.
Right.
High school only.
But the recommendation is to retain eighth grade, so.
Yes, ma'am. I am making the motion to retain only at the high school, so not the 8th grade.
And I second it. Any comments or questions? Okay, let's vote.
Mrs. Rosales?
No.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
We're voting to only retain at the high school level.
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
Yes to retain.
Next is To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Recommendation is for middle and high schools and a consideration for parent permission for 13 and under.
Madam Chairman, I would move that we would follow the media specialist recommendation, but retain high school level only.
High school only, okay. I will second that. Any comments or discussion?
Yes, I thought this one included parental consent. Yes, it is. Yes, parent permission. So,
Mr. Vaught has said only for high school.
oh, you said only for
Only for high school.
This says the recommendation is 13 and under.
Okay. So I make amendment to include parental consent.
At the high school level?
Want parental?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. We have to have a second on that.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr.
Can I get some clarity to Ms. Rosales' motion or amendment? Are you making the motion that it would be retained at the high school level only by parent permission?
That is correct.
I
Have a
second.
second. Mr. Tidwell is seconding that. So we want to vote on the amended. I understand.
Doing a great job, Don.
You're doing great.
All right, this is on the amendment to include parental consent, excuse me. Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught?
Pass.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
Amendment passes.
Now we will vote on the To All the Boys I've Loved Before to retain or not.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
The yeses have it to retain.
Next, we have Looking for Alaska. Back to this one.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
I would like to make a motion that this book is removed.
Second.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it. There it is. Okay, sorry. So we have a motion to remove.
Remove.
And it's been seconded by Ms. Rosales. Any
Point of clarification, this one also does not meet the definition of obscenity and does not meet the definitions listed in 3917-901.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
On page 210, I believe this does meet the definition of sexual conduct by an ultimate sexual act as listed in the definitions.
I'm just stating what the reviewer said. I'm not playing lawyer.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Mrs. Darby?
This is on the motion to remove, correct?
Motion to remove.
Correct.
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught? Mr. Vaughn? Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
This is yes to remove.
Next, we have concrete. Concrete rows, sorry.
Make a motion to remove.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Hang on just a second.
It's on the back of the first. We have a motion to remove. Any other discussion? Okay.
All right. Mr. Vaught?
No.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
This is yes to remove.
Next, we have Mondays not coming.
Motion to remove.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes,
Can we have some discussion on this before we start jumping on motions?
We'll have discussion after the motion, absolutely. The only
Okay.
reason why we went ahead and voted, there seemed to be no discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so his motion is to remove. Do we have a second?
Okay. Ms. Maxwell?
We don't seem to have a second.
Okay.
Okay, you, Ms. Sharp,
Oh.
okay.
So this book in particular is just for retained high schools only. And so the reviewer is saying that it doesn't necessarily meet the standards of what is sexually explicit pertaining to the law. And I just want to bring to attention what this book is about, because it talks about a topic that is very prevalent amongst a particular group, and it has to do with a child that was just vanished without a trace. And the author, the inspiration of where this storyline came was because there were 2 court cases about a teenager that had been that had disappeared, and based on the demographics of where the teenagers lived, they went to the police, and the police basically didn't do anything. So with the author, inspiration came that to talk about a topic that was happening within her own community. Just like when, again, I said I've been in publishing for many years, no longer in publishing, just have to restate that. And this particular book deals into the issues that happen in this particular community. And it will be a book that, in my opinion, will be read to open a worldview through the lens of a child within the ages of 13 to 18. It may not be a worldview that some teenagers may be going through at the current moment, but it does speak to things that are happening in communities that are prevalent to that. You may not agree with me, and that's okay, but I will be in favor to retain high schools only with parental permission.
Well, we have a motion
Well,
right
I
now.
know, but I'm just,
Thank you.
I'm just stating what.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Maxwell,
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
Again, I have to, and I advise everyone that's listening to look at when these books were submitted. They were submitted with excerpts, which is the challenged content that we're speaking of today. I would certainly recommend everyone look at the challenged content. I think, once again, at least from my opinion of the law, I don't see how this may meet the definition, at least not under sexual conduct. And for that reason, I would support an amendment to an opt-in for 11th and 12th grade.
I will second that.
Okay, well, we have a motion to remove, but
Well, time out. I thought the motion's to remove.
it was, so we need to vote on that, and then we can
Oh, yeah.
do a new motion if you'd like.
You're going at this.
He already got a second.
We have to vote on his motion
Yeah,
first, that's what I'm
he's already
saying.
got a second.
Do you want to amend it, or do you want to just keep it as is? Okay, so let's vote on to remove.
Okay. Motion to remove. Mr. Tidwell?
No.
Mrs. Rosales?
No.
Ms. Sharp?
No.
Mr. Vaught? Mr. Vaughn? Mrs. Darby?
No.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
Ms. Maxwell,
We're going to retain at this point.
Yes, at this point, and now Mr.
I'd
Tidwell.
like to make the motion for parental opt-in at 11th and 12th grade.
Second. 11th and 12th. Ms. Rosales seconded it. So not just high school, 11th and 12th,
Just 11th and 12th.
just 11th and 12th.
Oh, wait a minute. What?
He wants to exclusively make it for 11th and 12th with an opt-in.
All right.
Any other discussion? Okay.
Mr. Vaught?
Pass.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
All right. This is a yes to retain with the opt-in for 11th and 12th grade only.
Next, we have Vampire Academy.
Motion to remove.
Is there a second?
It fails for lack of a second. Do we have another motion?
Madam Chairman, I move that the book be retained according to the media specialist's recommendation.
Can't find it. Okay, sorry. Okay, so we have a motion to retain according to the high schools only, which is the recommendation of the media specialist. I will second that.
Ms. Maxwell?
Yes, Ms. Rosales.
Sorry. I'm going to propose an amendment to the motion to retain from 9 through 12 with parental consent. And the reason is because the topic, one of the major themes that are spoke about is cutting. And I believe that if children are going through certain issues in their homes and parents are aware of what's going on in their lives, I'm not saying I'm against removing the book. I'm saying that if they are going through that similar issue, because it does kind of goes into a little bit of detail that you can actually imagine what's happening, then parents will determine if they do want a child to read that particular book with that theme, especially if they're already going through that situation. And that is why I am making the amendment to include parental consent.
Let's vote on the amendment. Anybody got a second? I'll second it. Okay, let's vote on the amendment.
Okay, this amendment is to retain with parental consent for grades 9 through 12. Mr. Tidwell?
No.
Mrs. Rosales?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp? No. Mr. Vaught? Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mrs. Darby?
No.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
It's no to retain with parental consent for grades 9 through 12.
Okay, so now we just go back to the original motion? And
Amendment failed.
amendment failed. And the original motion was, which is?
All right, the original motion is
Retain.
retain according to the media specialist recommendation.
Okay.
All right, Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught? Yes. Mrs. Rosales?
Pass.
Mr. Vaughn?
No.
Mr. Tidwell?
No.
Ms. Sharp?
No.
Mrs. Maxwell?
Yes.
All right, we have 3 yes, 3 noes, and a pass.
Motion fails. Next, we have Eleanor and Park. So it's removed. It's removed. Eleanor and Park.
Oh, I got to
Wait,
ask a
yeah.
question right here. So then, if the board doesn't endorse a book, it automatically comes off. That's what you're ruling.
We were told.
It would be because the books were removed.
Okay, because they have been removed.
They have been removed
We
already.
we're voting really to put them
To put
back
them back.
in, so it would have to be an affirmative motion.
Correct.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Motion to remove.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were voting on the second, third book.
We have a motion to remove.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
Are we on the next book now?
We're on the last one, Eleanor and Park. And the motion is to remove, and it's been seconded.
All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Mrs. Darby?
Yes.
Mr. Vaught?
No.
Mrs. Rosales?
No.
Mr. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Tidwell?
Yes.
Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
Mrs. Maxwell?
No.
We have 4 yes to remove.
Let's take a 3-minute break. 5-minute break, please. Recess. Financial report.
So I went over this on Tuesday, but everyone has a handout that is easy to be able to read to give you an idea. The part I'm going to look at first, and we'll attach this to the minutes as well, is the 24-25 overall budget. The overall budget's $538 million. We do have $11 million that it was in the fund balance for charter schools. I don't have that included because it skews numbers. You'll see salary and benefits is 74.5%. And I went over again these numbers. It's just a handout to have. And then the actual numbers beside it. Just want everyone to have an overview of where we are. The 3.8% represents like special education, CTE equipment, board, just a little bit of hodgepodge of everything. But I do like to call out a couple things. You'll see substitutes are about $4 million. Trustees commission, I mentioned that the other night, is $3.5 million. Liability insurance continues to go up. So that includes liability and our property insurance, so a little bit of both. Instruction is 1.7%. Of course, if you include the number of teachers, it's a lot higher than that. And then the other is the 20 million. So that gives you an idea of what our overall percentage is. If you'll look over on the back, this is the part that I'm probably most concerned about. 25-26 new expenses. The reoccurring expenses are going to be the proposal for a 2.5% raise is about $7.5 million roughly every year. That should be offset by the governor puts funding into TISA every single year to get teachers closer to that 50,000. We just don't know what that is yet. Poplar Hill, I mentioned $2 million. It's going to be somewhere between 2 to 2.5, depending on how many cafeteria lines I have to open, how many custodians we have to hire to open that school, those different types of things. I fully expect utilities to go up. If you've noticed your own home bill, it's gone up. So I fully expect utilities to go up. Transportation, I put 3 to 10 million because that's just an unknown. The minimum would be the 3 million roughly. The 1.4 million for a 5% increase plus the 1.3 million for liability gets you close to that 3 million percentage or number. So that's kind of what we're looking at. We do have extremely healthy fund balance right now, over 100 million. As we mentioned back last year, we cut some things from the budget, hoping that our fund balance would be high enough that we would be able to go back as we moved into April and May. Science textbooks, I would like to hopefully go ahead and purchase those once our committees make a decision in April so that we don't have to wait until July. And if we wait until July, that means we will get behind all the other counties. And if we get behind all the other counties, we will be stuck not getting all our textbooks until September once school is already well into play. High school computers as well, we're getting very close to that 1-to-1 rotation. We added an extra year. That would still leave us well into the 95 million into fund balance. We're going to mention that to budget as well. We will be asking, this is not a surprise, for debt to cover middle school of around 80 million. That should be covered with the adequate facilities tax increase from $1 to $1.50 that the legislature passed last year, and then just growth of the penny and some of our debt service. The one that we don't necessarily know how to cover is the 150 to 200 million for the high school. New revenue, you'll see that below is projected 3% TISA base increase, and it could be more than that, but that just follows last year, about 8 million. If you take our $7,050 or $7,075 base and you multiply that out by 52,000, it comes well over 10 million, but the state covers 70% of that and the local covers 30. So about 8 million would be our growth. We will lose about 3 million for the coding change for economically disadvantaged, however. So it's about a 5,000 positive gain. New students, we've added about 500. That'll give us about 4 million. We do have 2 potential charter schools, and we will have to upfront those costs as our board's well aware. So it depends on how many students those charters look to and if we approve them. So we are looking at the highest shortfall of somewhere between 15 and 20 million. Putting that together with what you see on the previous page, there's not a whole lot of places to cut from. If you go and look at our budget from the last 3 years, our local funding has remained the same, and it's remained the same because we have put so much funding into deferred maintenance 177 capital projects and into debt. So it may be time that we have to start taking some funding out of 177 and putting it back into 141. I know that was part of the discussion with County Commission last year. We put an extra penny back into 177, knowing that operating costs were going to have to come back up. So, any questions on all? Yes, ma'am.
Got one.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Sharp.
On the new students of 500?
Yes.
Is that from August?
That is from August to now, so it is probably going to grow.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Good question, because I was asking the same.
We've got 1,700 from May to August.
correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's just what we have right now.
Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
It depends. We have, I would guess probably another 400 students between now and the end of the school year, so closer to 1,000. We could. The thing that's going to change is we definitely are watching trends with populations after inauguration to see what occurs. So that could change things, and that's why I'm not as solid on what true population may be.
And the reason I said that, 20, 25 years ago, we were 1,000.
And we have been 1,000, yes.
You've been as high as 2,500 in one school year.
2 years ago, and we never want to be that again.
That's what I'm
Yes.
saying. So your belief is that we're coming back off that high curve right now?
No, Rutherford Collegiate Prep has about 500 students right now.
So you think that's where the
Yes, that's where the cushion is. We're still right at 1,000. We beat about 1,300. I don't know the cut between us and the city school students, so we'd be in that 12 to 1,400 range.
How are their numbers?
Don't know. They don't report to us.
Store talk, hearsay.
400 to 500 right now. Yep. So hopefully this helps just give everybody an idea of where we are.
Let me ask you one question about the science textbooks.
Yes.
What is the cost of electronic textbooks?
The same as the paper-bound textbooks.
Really?
Yes, sir, they are. They are a package deal now.
The only advantage is that they get updated a lot quicker than paperbacks, right? But they're the same price.
Ms. Maxwell,
Yes, Mr. Tidwell.
you didn't mention the high school land.
I did not, because I am hoping that will fit within the 200 million.
Okay.
Hopeful.
Okay.
How close are we on that?
The Mr. Reed question.
We're getting there. That's about all we can say right now.
Can we get there quickly? Because I really want to ask for this school in September.
We're going to try to get there quickly. Yeah. Director's update?
Yeah, a couple quick things. One, of course, we announced school closure. Central office will be closed tomorrow. I think the entire world in Tennessee is closed tomorrow. I just saw something that they published that every school district in the state of Tennessee is closed tomorrow, so it's only the second time in the last 20 years that's happened. Extracurriculars are off. We will make a decision on weekend events, but we emailed all principals and supervisors and told them go ahead and start rescheduling those on Tuesday. We'll make that official decision tomorrow once it starts snowing, though. We'll make a decision about Monday on Sunday. If we, of course, get 6 to 8 inches of snow, regardless of how hot it is on Sunday, Monday will be tough.
Mr. Vaughn, do you have any influence on these weather predictions since you sell a lot of milk?
So I want to thank Dr. Martin. So she had to, and Mr. Rooney had to go over and handle budget. We just had one item, accepting the grant on the agenda. And so that helped. I also want to thank Commissioner Harris and really the entire budget committee. They allocated $7,500 for Stewart's Creek High School to be able to help fund with the inauguration. I don't need board approval to do it, but I think it would be good of us to be able to, just for our board, to say that we were at least matching or doing more. Is the board okay with us doing?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody against that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we'll at least match that. We can probably,
We fund every rest of it.
we probably can. We will look at all that to see what donations and
Because there's more, from what I understand, there's
second
more
that
donations
motion.
coming in. Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Aye.
To fund the rest of it.
Fund the rest of it.
They have 70,000, so right now they're at 77,500, so it's under 50,000.
So we can take
I
care
can
of it.
fund the rest of that,
Wonderful.
with purchasing, yeah. Yes, correct, yeah, correct.
Wonderful.
I want to thank a couple things. We had a legislative dinner with our legislators and our school board on Monday. I was with our delegation again on Wednesday for Motlow's legislative update. Our board has just a quick handout that they highlighted. If you've never spent a lot of time with Dr. Torrance, the president of Motlow, he's an amazing guy, an amazing leader. He is a yes person, which is good because he will try things, and the worst thing that you do is you come back and you punt and try something different. And so this highlights really his leadership and our partnership, Dr. Chastain and Dr. Martin, when she was the secondary coordinator, and now Dr. Poole, and then also Patrick Wade with TCAT, just the partnerships that we have, and it was great. Serving as I mentioned on Tuesday, as the CEO, I spend a lot of time with numbers and data and finances, and it's great to really see the student outcome aspect of it. Had some reinvigorating conversations around possibly looking at a way to do health sciences somewhere in the Blackman-Stewart's Creek area. That may be a couple years off, but that is a great sector off 840 connecting towards 96 and towards 65 that Motlow, TCAT, MTSU, and us can look at partnering with to try to figure out a way to do health sciences. And just wanted to give them a shout out because Dr. Torrance does an amazing job. And I think that's all I want to hit at.
Okay. Ms. Rosales and then Ms. Sharp.
Are we in general comments now? Oh, okay. I was just going to say that in regard the vein of thought of what you were mentioning about the Stewart's Creek High School band, I just want to publicly thank everyone that I've called to. I've called State House delegation, our state senators, small businesses, and I want to say thank you so much for donating, making a contribution for something that's going to be very special for Stewart's Creek High School and being able to go to the inauguration of the president. Regardless of who the president is, I will have stepped up and make phone calls so that the kids will have an honor of marching in a parade and something that's quite big and significant. So I just want to say thank you very much for that.
Ms. Sharp.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sullivan, back to Motlow. At one time, the Dillard's building, there was some talk about the Dillard's building since Dillard's is closing now. Not to put you on the spot, but has there been any more discussion about us going in that building?
I know Motlow has talked about it, and it was not a possibility right now.
Okay.
From the financial aspect of it.
Okay.
If there's someone who wants to try to start making that work again, and I know that the TCAT and TBR has a lot more availability with funds than we do, especially with the legislative session starting, that would probably be the angle to be able to do, but what was being asked for was pretty astronomical.
And I know their leasing was, so a little background on the Dillard's buildings. Dillard's typically owns their buildings, but this was one building that they did not own and that they had leased. The leasors were wanting them to sign a multi-year contract, so back when Mr. Spurlock was here, when I was on the board then, we were looking at it with Motlow to do a joint venture with that building. So now it has come to fruition that Dillard's is leaving, so I was hoping that we could do some kind of CTE hub or something there in that building.
Yeah, I've toured it with Mayor Carr and then with Dr. Torrance, and the financials didn't work out. That's been about 2 years before Dillard's was leaving again. So
maybe we can go back and talk to them, but I also, thank you. I also would like to thank, again, Smyrna Ready Mix. They must be our 12th man because they sent a check for $10,000. And
Excellent.
There was a pizza company, and it wasn't Domino's or Pizza Hut. It was a local pizza company that sent a $12,000 check. So thank you, guys. Y'all send thank you notes, send food, send whatever to those that allow our students. And $120,000 is really not a lot of money. It's about $600 per student and chaperone. So, in this time of year when they have these events, the hotels are very expensive, and so things are lot higher than they normally would be. So thank everybody for stepping up and sending our very, very talented band to DC.
Absolutely, and I love this county. They find out there's a need and they step up, and I appreciate everybody doing that. Is there anything else anybody would like to, yes, Mr. Vaughn?
If anybody, any students that they're concerned about thinking about what they want to do when they get to high school, really consider being in the band. Because I'm telling you, when I was growing up, my sister was in the band, and I was on the football team. And man, in August, it was awful. And then come after football season's over with, she would go to they went to California one time to the Rose Bowl parade. And every year they went somewhere, down in Florida somewhere. And we got to go to the Tobacco Bowl over in Hartsville, Tennessee. So that's the best. So if you want to weigh those out and you're looking for something that you're interested in, give band a shot, because that's a good trip. Those kids remember that trip forever.
I was in the band, and we went to Orlando and Washington, D.C., and it was a blast.
More students go to college on a scholarship in the band than they do sports.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm all for the arts. Yes.
Ms. Maxwell. I appreciate this. I'm looking at the dual enrollment numbers here from Motlow, and as somebody who went their first 2 years to Motlow, that's pretty awesome. I'm glad that we have that partnership. I was also going to ask, there was some mention about the central HVAC. Can we get an update on that, or is that, I know that that's been something that's going on, but.
It would probably need to be an executive session since there's legal
Understood.
ramifications there.
Okay.
But know that it is being addressed.
One last thing. I said something on Tuesday. Everyone had a copy of it about the radio spots. Is everybody okay with them?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Vaughn.
Going back to that House Resolution 22, if I understand the intent of it, it seemed like it was unanimous here to endorse that idea. I would propose that on next month's agenda, we put on there, if we need to vote on doing public comment during the work session. If we do, I would like to do it at a specific time, like 6:30, to give parents, teachers, whoever wants to come, opportunity that they don't have to rush here to get here before we start or be right at the first part of the agenda. So I would request that would be on. Just go ahead and circumvent it. If we're endorsing it, let's do it. But I would ask that be on the agenda next month.
Dawn, could you put that on the agenda, please? Yes, yes.
Since that is going to be a state law change, I think we need to put it on just for official, put it on policy committee for next week too. Yep.
I got one other thing. The other night I mentioned that when we did the dual zone things and we allowed certain groups to be able to go to school they chose in those dual zones, and I'd really just like to, by motion or whatever, just make it fair where that all the dual zones have the same option, just to be fair to everybody.
I don't believe we can change it at this point. It can't be changed. Parents needed to know.
Ms. Maxwell? Yes. I got asked about the dual zone, the form and all that. My understanding was that there was a glitch in the form. Has the form been fixed? Okay, great. I was not very specific. I was getting text messages saying that the form was not working. I don't know exactly what that meant, and when there was no specifications of what not working meant.
They can reach out to us and Mr. McCann, and we can figure it out for them.
Okay, and then the other question is, when they talk about current school, are they, the field for that, do they write the name of the high school that their child is currently enrolled for this current academic year? Okay, perfect. Those were the questions I had.
That's it. Thank you. Anything else? Move to adjourn. Second. We're adjourned.